That's also part of what the policy is all about, that they'll be setting up some clusters to ensure that all the parts that we'll be using for assembling of these cars will actually be found here in Nigeria. And even if we can't get it, we'll begin to have factories actually set up to ensure that this happens. So definitely it's going to be a win-win situation that they're actually on the part. So what we should be looking at is, in your own opinion, what should be the time frame? Should they have a short to medium time frame for themselves, or a medium to long term time frame for themselves?
We need medium and long term framework. What I want us to do, I have said it, but if you want me to repeat it, I repeat it. But you see, the problem is, unless the small business, because it's a small business that if you now say that the parts are not to be made overseas, the small business will now be making maybe a tube, or maybe making parts. That's what I'm saying. So as soon as they start doing that, it becomes locally domesticated. You understand what I mean? Then at the end of the day, the problem I continue to say this, is that we don't have the basic industrial infrastructure. That's what I mean. Because at the end of the day, people will look at cost. If the cost is excessively high, they will not come to Nigeria. But if the costs have been driven down, if we have invested massively, as I have continued to tell government to do, invest massively in power sector. We can borrow money because we have the collateral, we have the means to borrow. We will borrow money and fix the power sector, and of course fix the road network system. And if we do this, then we reduce the cost of doing business in Nigeria.
But Odulim, are you aware that successfully the DISCOs and the GENCOs,
of course, I'm aware.
PHCN has been successfully unbundled to 14 successors?
I know all these things because I follow all these things every day.
Okay, so now that has happened, and also yesterday during the commissioning of the Igenguru in Kogi State, the president also mentioned that the NIPPs will also be privatized. That's the NIPPs that we have right now will also be privatized to ensure that this actualization of the reality of getting stable power supply is actually achieved by the second quarter to the third quarter of next year. Now, if we have all of this being put in place, why?
I'm telling you, we don't have enough. Look, this country, I don't know if you
have to start from somewhere.
You have to start from somewhere, but you can leapfrog. You see, the problem in this country is that we are a big country thinking very small. When China started in 1979, because then on 18th December 1978 became president, and by January 1979, the man started massive transformation. If we borrow money and be able to produce and transmit 100,000 megawatts, now we have enough power, because what you are saying now is that when these power consuming industries come to Nigeria, you don't have enough. Because we need to do it. No country has allowed private sector to drive its power sector because it's a very, very sensitive sector. China produces today 1,141,000 megawatts, ahead of the United States that produces 1 million or 100 megawatts. Because China massively invested in this sector through the state, not through private sector. I'm not against private sector, but the state and the private sector must all work together to bring the amount of power we need. We need up to 100,000 megawatts between now and 2018, so that the businesses that are coming to Nigeria will not be stifled, will not pay a lot of money to meet their power needs.
So how can we leapfrog? You say we need to leapfrog from where we are right now.
Look, the president went to China, which I'm very, very happy he did. And the benefits are coming quickly. Mr. President must engage the Chinese. The Chinese are the largest power producer in the world. Why not we engage the Chinese and say, look, we can give you as collateral 3 billion barrels of oil, which is just collateral, but help us to set up the infrastructure to beginning to produce about 100,000 megawatts. So they'll put in place the Chinese are people who love work. Chinese, if you give them 1 year, they do that. And then we think we have about 10 years or 20 years moratorium. During that period of time, our economy would have diversified, would have grown, that we pay the money. If we can't pay the money, we negotiate how to use the oil as a collateral. But we must move this country. You see, I love this country so much so that I don't want to lie to myself. It's easy to meet with you and we agree, we play around issues, and you shake my hand, I shake your hand. But before I die, I want to see a great Nigeria. And the only way we can do it is that we must take the bold steps. The bold steps are not being taken. Okonjo-Iweala is just dancing around the issue. She knows that we must exit WTO. There's no 2 ways about it. China joined WTO in 2001. We joined WTO in 1995. As soon as WTO came into power, you cannot, a boy for 2 years cannot be a marathon with somebody.
So wait,
25.
Let me get your point here now. China is still part of WTO.
It joined in 2001, December 2001,
and it's still
because it discovered the benefits when it was joined, because it is now an industrial economy.
Okay, let's just get this point now.
Yes.
China is part of the WTO, as well as Nigeria.
Yes.
But you are saying that Nigeria should exit the WTO.
Of course.
Why?
Because it is the WTO that is destroyed, because the WTO opens your border with less tariffs. Foreign-made goods are dumped in Nigeria, and if Nigerian government has not, even if you don't exit WTO, you put so many invisible tariffs, it makes it difficult. It makes foreign-made goods more expensive when it arrives in Nigeria through all the tariffs, all the tariff taxes they pay. Then it forces them to relocate their factories to Nigeria. That's what China did. But if you open the border, it means that people make something in South Africa. You do know South African factories are just producing things and dumping them in Nigeria. It is, for them, it is, because the cost of doing business in South Africa is low, cost of doing business in China is low, cost of doing business in Nigeria is high.
So in the event that we can't exit the WTO just yet,
yes,
what about our trade policy?
Wonderful, wonderful. You see, I'm talking to a senator. I don't want to mention her name. And this senator, former Minister of Finance, and she agreed with me, we're going to come up with what we call infra-industry bill, which very soon we'll come up with this bill. If we come up with this bill, we now build a shield around our small businesses that they can now survive, they can now grow without being displaced by foreign-made goods, by foreign-made goods from China, from India, from South Africa, and things like that.
But before we get there, how about the other policy that we have right now that is supposed to be working for the economy in terms of preventing most of these goods from coming in through the borders? Like you said, we have agencies that actually have this responsibility of preventing this. Aren't the policies strong enough for them to the policies that we have, that the agencies have, that they are working with, isn't it enough for them to prevent?
No, because it's not prevention. It's a question of, if you put a tariff, 10% tariff on the importation of rice, then how can Dangote go and make that rice? It will cost 3 times the price. Then Dangote will not sell. But if you put a tariff based on the real cost of producing rice in Nigeria, the person bringing rice to Nigeria will discover that it's more expensive, the rice is bringing to Nigeria, than Dangote rice. I'm just using Dangote. I'm not saying Dangote makes rice. And of course, when you make the price of importation very high by tariff, people that are importing, dumping rice in Nigeria will discover that it is no longer profitable for them. They come to relocate to Nigeria and make the goods to take advantage of the arbitrage, to take advantage of the non-tariff goods they are making locally. But that's not you see, the problem with me is that people think that I hate government. No, I don't hate government. I love this government. In fact, Jonathan is one of my mentors, because this man is a humble man. You understand me? But that's why I'm trying to tell him what we need to do, so that if he wants us to re-elect him, we re-elect him so that we continue. But as we're going now, we're going off the ground. For example, look at our banks in 2009. The banks were almost bankrupt. But there came AMCON, and one single man was handed that AMCON to transform our banking sector. And the Mustafa Chikobi carefully, quietly, noiselessly transformed our banks. Our banks are today as heavier than they were before 1999. Am I criticizing him? No. No.
Okay. Looking at all of these policies now, and looking at the way most African countries are focusing on increasing their competitiveness, they are testing new approaches such as growth roads as centers of industry that can become magnets for investment in specific sectors now to spur investment and sustainable growth. What are your thoughts? Is Nigeria doing same, bearing in mind that yes, this present administration has started some reforms, especially in key sectors like the power sector, agriculture, manufacturing, and the banking industry, like you also mentioned?
I don't know how you want me to answer the question, because the question is too much. First of all, let's put it in this way, that Nigeria has a more comparative advantage than most of these African countries because of population and because of natural resources. So Nigeria cannot be comparing with China, with Ghana and with Togo and things like that. Nigeria has the population, it has the market. So what Nigeria needs to do is to do what China, India, those two countries have done, because of including Brazil. So what I'm trying to say in essence is this: if we can come together, and bring some Nigerians together and say, let's come up with a comprehensive plan. The plan will be how do we resolve our infrastructure deficit of 250 billion naira, $250 billion. Then there will be a plan. Then we start looking for the money. Because the problem in Nigeria, there's no plan. The plan is not comprehensive enough. When we have a comprehensive plan, just like you want to build a house, you have a comprehensive plan, a detailed plan. Then you start asking...
Yes, the country does have a detailed plan. This present administration has a detailed plan. It has a 7-point agenda.
7-point agenda is not a plan. It's just a philosophy. It's a philosophy. You see, when I'm talking about plan, I'm talking about, we say we have to crisscross this country with the 5-lane road network from Sokoto to Port Harcourt to things like that. We say we're going to have 100 megawatts of power. We articulate all this and say in the next 5 years we will have to do this. That's what China does. So if we say that, we now ask ourselves, how do we get the money? But now, answering your question, in terms of competitiveness, Nigeria in terms of competitiveness, of course, the problem with competitiveness in Nigeria is because of the high cost of infrastructure. The infrastructure is in that state that is not adding value to any productive activity. 2, we have to really evaluate our banking system, because in China the core banking commercial banks are in the state hands. So that if we make sure that our commercial banks are not there for profit maximization, but looking at long-term relationship with the small businesses, with the private sector, so that eventually they will be able to give loans, soft loans, they will be able to give money for a long-term project, and then work hand in hand with the owners of this business to grow the business and all share profit. But when it is profit maximization, when Nigerian businesses go to China, Exit Bank of China, and eventually get money at the 2% or 3%, and then use that money to open LCs for importation of Chinese-made goods, then it makes it difficult for Nigerian, for someone to go to the bank and borrow when you cannot borrow at such rate if you want to manufacture. Okay. So,
no, I'm listening to you, sorry.
So what do we need to do? As I've said, to be competitive, you need to reduce the cost of doing business. You need to make made in Nigeria what everybody must first and foremost have access to and be cheaper.